My name is Dr. Derek Kerr. After 20 years working at Laguna Honda Hospital, I became a whistleblower and was promptly laid off. Human resources was not helpful or even objective. I had to sue the city to get vindication, plus a $750,000 settlement. You've heard from employees like Sonia Knudson, who report being bullied and otherwise treated unfairly. They are among a brave minority who speak out after getting nowhere through regular channels. There's a lot of discontent out there. National surveys show that 1 in 3 workers experience bullying at some time during their careers. You assume that human resources will alert you to the prevalence of abusive workplace practices. But human resources has never surveyed city employees. Some 30,000 have never been asked about workplace bullying, harassment, and discrimination. So please consider a survey about workplace bullying among city employees and recent retirees. This would give you primary frontline data, feedback, in addition to HR's perspective, and would give you a better understanding of life at work. Survey data would enhance your deliberations and your decision-making. It would also convey to workers that you value their input.
Phase A and Phase B. I'm going to make a statement before the commissioners, and then my representative, Steve Pataki, of Local 1021 will provide further illumination on certain key aspects. Before beginning, though, I would like to clarify some statements made with regard to the definition of a friendship and a mentorship with Mr. Blake Summers. That is incorrect. And I think it's clearly the fact that now that's not at all possible, and the working relationship is rather strained. And I have very little involvement with Mr. Summers, and my so-called contact with him is a good morning in the morning when I pass in the hallway at his office. The second aspect is with regard to the failure on my part to sign the complaint form for 1618. The reasons given are incorrect, but also there was failure to note, as has been ongoing through this whole odyssey, that I have had family leave absences and therefore not available for meetings. Excuse me. And Mr. Pataki and I met several times with the airport EEO representative with regard to 1618, and I had submitted a complaint filing, and the representative was in the process of transferring it to the city form, and we were working out the clarification of definition of the complaint as well as the aspects therein, and we ran into time constraints on all parties concerned for both meetings, and it was left in limbo for the last meeting, which never occurred because of not only my own absence, but that of Mr. Pataki's because of a very busy work schedule on his part. And then I received an email from the representative stating that given they felt they had adequate information before them, there was no reason to pursue additional meetings, and I was not submitted any form to sign at that time, nor had indication what was actually on the form. Lastly, with regard to the panelists, I think it bears mentioning that there is actual relationships. Mr. Summers has stated his role with regard to the selection of the positions, the minimum qualification, the duration of the posting, but also the selection of the panelists, the selection of the questions for the panelists to answer, but also ultimately he was the hiring manager. And for his own position, his direct supervisor, of which he has 2, one is which the airport director, John Martin. The second supervisor he has is Jackson Wong, the airport chief operating officer. Mr. Wong was the ultimate hiring manager for that particular position, 0941. With regard to the panelists, I just want to bring it to the Commission's attention of some disturbing aspects, and because I had already been labeled complaint happily, I was certainly not going to appeal any further the processes or the decision making. So with regard to the 0941 position for the Manager 6, Director and Chief Curator for the San Francisco Airport Museums, on the panel was Jackson Wong, as well as Teresa Lee, the Deputy Director of Administration, both of whom work daily on an ongoing basis with Mr. Summers because all three are on the airport senior staff. And Ms. Lee is, in fact, oversees the airport EEO and the HR departments, so she certainly knew of the ongoing complaints. And the position for the 0923 Manager 2, Assistant Director of Museum Exhibitions, there were in fact several individuals on the panel that did have involvement with Mr. Summers and with various personnel within the SFO departments. One example would be Audrey Lawrence, who oversees health and safety at the airport, and she works directly with Gloria Louie and the EEO department at the airport, as well as the airport HR department and the individuals under Mr. Centennial. With regard to the last position, Manager 1, 0922, this position, again, the panelists, there was some conflicts with regard to some vehicle not being appropriate. Ms. Jean Caramani, who is the Airport Commission Secretary, who is overseeing certain aspects of renting out the Aviation Museum facility, who works closely with Airport Museum staff, inclusive of Mr. Summers, my current supervisor, Mr. Hill, who was ultimately selected for that position, as well as other pertinent staff. She was on that panel. She also is on the Aeronautical Society board and works closely with Mr. Summers and Mr. Hill. Another individual on the panel was from the Aeronautical Society Board, which is a supporting arm of the San Francisco Airport Museum's Aviation Museum, and he was on the panel and has a knowledge and working relationship with Mr. Hill. So I just want to bring that forward for the record. Now, if you would permit, I'm now going to proceed with my statement, and then Mr. Pataki will come forth with certain other aspects. But I do encourage you to ask me questions for clarification. I do think it's a very complex timeline and with many different events. And I myself, having been the recipient, am myself confused oftentimes about dates and years because they go through so many. This has been ongoing since 2007. So I'm going to now proceed with my statement, and thank you for your patience for that clarification. My name is Sonia Knudson. I'm here before you because I believe in the system and the role of the Civil Service Commission within the City and County of San Francisco. I work at the San Francisco Airport Museum. SFO Museum is a department of the San Francisco International Department, a department of the City and County of San Francisco. Is it understandable that after being in a car accident, I would use FMLA, sick leave absences for medical injuries and physical rehabilitation needs? Yes. Once you return to work from a family leave absence, is it expected that you would come back to your previous position and job responsibilities? Yes. Would you be surprised if your supervisor states, "Why would I promote you? You haven't been here the last year"? Yes. In the worksite, does change occur in programs and staffing? Yes. In a departmental 5-year plan, is there not expectation that management fully utilizes all staff? Yes. If you're consistently ranked as eligible for management positions, such as Manager 6, Manager 2, Manager 1, has not the city validated your qualifications? Yes. With knowledge of your qualifications, would you not expect your supervisor to capitalize on your skills and abilities for the department's benefit and that of the City and County of San Francisco? Yes. In 2007, the airport director and EEO department provided an employee survey report to the Airport Commission and to DHR downtown that women and minorities are notably underutilized at SFO. With plan to address these inequities, would you expect that there would be an improvement at SFO in the subsequent year? Yes. When the airport director and EEO department noted in 2008 to the Airport Commission and DHR that women and minorities are notably underutilized, and then report in 2009 and 2010 and the many years that followed, that women and minorities are notably underutilized, would not there be a concern as to why there is no improvements? Yes. When a city employee files a discrimination complaint, it is because of concerns for workplace issues. It is not the responsibility of the city, is it not the responsibility of the city to investigate in an unbiased manner and address concerns brought forth? Yes. If a city employee files a discrimination complaint, are they not protected from retaliation? Yes. So, the question is why? How is the city elected to disregard fundamental rights of a city employee? I am one of many city employees, and unfortunately my situation is not unique. City workers well know and witness on a daily basis how SFO and city management abuse their authority. City workers well know that city hiring practices and promotions do not hire and promote the most qualified candidates always. I represent so many city employees, past and present, who have been and continue to be discriminated and retaliated against. I represent so many city workers who know and want to contribute so much to improve the city in all departments, and yet have been purposely marginalized and underutilized at their worksite. City workers well know the discrimination complaint process is a sham and only serves to punish those who come forward, such as myself. City workers well know that management is protected from being held accountable for their wrongdoing. City workers well know their place, the value of looking the other way, keeping their head down, not speaking up. I represent so many workers who do not dare come forth as I have, for fear of punishment and ostracization. I have a sincere belief that the Commission can make the city system work, can improve city workplace conditions, better capitalize on qualified, competent city workers, and instill accountability for all city employees and departments. The issues before you pertain to discrimination, retaliation, denial of promotion, and professional development, gender and disability bias. When is management discretion justified if the department and the city fail to be in compliance with city policies and procedures and local, state, and federal laws? The city's merit system is in place to ensure the most competent, qualified workers in San Francisco, as well as a fair and unbiased employment processes. Promotions of city workers is encouraged, hinging on employees being provided support, career development opportunities, and on-the-job work assignments. Management discretion is meant to optimize employees' strengths, skills, and abilities. Management discretion is not meant to justify status quo of gender, disability, and protected class bias. Because I am a woman, because I utilize family leave, because I filed a discrimination complaint, I have been retaliated against, isolated, removed from interaction and involvement in core museum programs. At SFO, I am not only held back by the glass ceiling, I am enclosed in a glass box. The city discrimination policy says to go to your supervisor when discrimination occurs. My supervisor committed the discrimination. The next option is to go to your supervisor. In my case, the airport director and chief operating officer, neither a possible option. The next step is to go to the airport EEO and HR departments, both of whom are well-established agencies protective of airport management. That's the reason I filed my complaints with DHR downtown, with hope for a more neutral and unbiased investigation, and a constructive means to resolve concerns brought forth in a timely manner. I now stand before the Commission requesting that my appeal be granted and that we begin the process of improving a city system that is in need of attention. Thank you.
Talk yesterday, Local 1021. There were just a couple of things that I wanted to point out. Firstly, getting back to the comment in the EEO's presentation that Mr. Summers didn't make the comment, and as they reported, thank you, Commissioner, for bringing that out. Because this timeline and it being 2 years and it being 5 years, 6 years that this has been going on, is meant to muddy waters. It's meant to beat down someone who's been discriminated against, as Sonia most eloquently stated. It's meant to make it harder, so people don't stand up. They look and they say, oh, well, look what Sonia got. She for 2 years was discriminated against. No one looked into it any further. There was no thorough and timely investigation. And to say that Ms. Knudsen, wasn't available to sign a document, she's at the airport 4 days a week. You know, where does the airport come forward and say, or EEO and say, here were the emails we sent you, here are the telephone calls. Prove to me that you made an attempt to get that signed, and that's what held it up. Because 2 years with the employee working 4 days a week at your site, it's a little hard to believe. Again, trying to muddy the waters, stretch the time out, and beat down a good person and a good county employee. We're not talking about someone who just started work with the county. The other thing with regard to the county would like to make issue of the fact that there was no finding or whatever, it wasn't conclusive with DFEH investigation. My comment to that was hold yourself to a higher standard. The standards that need to be met in the discrimination complaint, which EEO didn't want to go over, but you'd have to ask yourself, because we all don't know them right off the top of our head. But in this case, you can find example. The complainant is a member of a protected category, yes. Has suffered an adverse employment action. We say that she hasn't been promoted. She's been held back from being promoted. The relationships between her boss, whether he is directly supervising her or not, they all answer to Mr. Blake Summers. So they all answer to him. He is the man there, regardless. And he answers to John Martin, to the airport director. So someone's getting pissed, and no one wants this matter to move forward and be resolved. So they muddy the waters and make it more difficult for Ms. Knudsen to find adjudication and someone look and say, yes, this has happened. So 2 of the 3. And then the complainant suffered an adverse employment action because of his or her own membership in a protected category. I say yes again. This meets all the standards. And the timeline for which a discrimination case can be filed, there was a timeline issue that was brought up. Well, we know that the timeline for filing discrimination complaints with DFEH and EEOC is extended by 6 months over other complaints due to the fact that discrimination in and of itself may take time to establish that it's actually happening. And we know that. We do. We know that as a people. We know that as commissioners. I know that in my capacity. Sonia has learned it in a difficult way. But sometimes we need to just hear it again. We need to hear it, and we need to see it, and it's standing before you. We talk about bias. Bringing up the fact that there was a DFEH complaint, bringing up the fact that there are other matters within the report that the report identifies are to bias this body against Sonia. Because everyone that has an opportunity to hear about this matter, that's what they do. They want to bias everyone against Sonia, and they did it in their promotional panels because everyone has to answer to Mr. Blake Summers. The relationships are there. The deck was stacked and continues to be stacked. The other point that I don't think was raised was in order to get one of the promotions, who was it for the aviation side of this book? There was the promotion where someone was given aviation background.
John Hill.
Okay. So when Mr. Hill was promoted, they were changing the requirements for that promotion. Now they didn't tell Ms. Knudsen. They didn't tell those folks who were going to be applying and move forward in that promotional process. What they did was they trained Mr. Hill specifically for the aviation aspect that was going to be on the job spec. That's what they did. They trained him so that when Ms. Knudsen got there, she couldn't meet that requisite. That's what happened. That's what they do, and they can.
Questions, actually, one for Ms. Knudsen or Mr. Pataki, whoever can answer it. There was some reference earlier to litigation, and I'm just for my clarification, did the litigation or encompass the issues that were raised in these two complaints, or did they concern other matters? Did it concern other matters?
There's two aspects to that. The reference to the DFEH, I think it's unfortunate that that was even referred to in the various filings provided to the Commission, because they, as you know, as a body, you go to them to file a complaint, but also just because they say there is not sufficient evidence, that doesn't mean that it precludes them from giving me, which they have, a right to sue letter. But also, my sincere hope before the Commission is any outstanding litigation pertaining to these matters does not consider or levy any influence on the Commission, because really we're talking about specific city policies with regard to hiring, with regard to merit system, with regard to promotions, with regard to discrimination complaint processes and retaliation aspects. And it will not have any merit to bring in the litigation aspects.
Well, the reason I was asking is that, if a court had decided any of these issues on the merits, that would make a difference.
The court, if the judge is in federal court, the decision for court date is now January 2015. There has been no decision.
Pardon me again, Steve Pataki. The last time we were here in 2011, the request was to put less documentation in front of you because, again, it was cumbersome. I look here, my note was the union, Ms. Knudsen and the union submitted 178 pages and condensed that to 87. The employer submitted 185 pages and condensed that to 259. Again, an attempt to muddy the waters and just make it more difficult for good employees.
I'm Steve Zeltzer. I'm with the Stop Workplace Bullying Group and United Public Workers for Action. First of all, I want to say that is it really outrageous that this commission is not on TV in San Francisco, because you spend millions of dollars, you vote to spend millions of dollars on contracts, and you deal with many public employees in their situation. Why aren't you on TV? Why doesn't the city have the money to put this on TV? Frankly, the reason is I think you don't want people to see what's going on in this commission, because I've been here a number of times, and this commission is a travesty. It's cost the city and county of San Francisco millions of dollars because of allowing illegal firings and retaliation and bullying of public employees. You people have gone along with this management who has actually encouraged bullying in the city and county of San Francisco and harassment. That has cost the city millions of dollars. It's led to disability and serious injuries among city workers because of the harassment and bullying. And the cases that you're going to hear today are an example of a kind of violation, flagrant violation of discrimination laws, flagrant violations of workers' rights, human rights by this commission and by the management of the city and county of San Francisco. And the fact that this is not on TV for the public to see in San Francisco, who are paying the cost of the city bills, is something that has to change. And we are going to make this a political issue, because behind the bullying, a lot of the bullying of public employees is whistleblowers who are exposing malfeasance and corruption. They're exposing managers taking money illegally from funds and using it, and these managers are still in place. The manager that fired Dr. Kerr and Dr. Rivera is still in charge at Laguna Honda. What kind of responsibility is that for management, for Mickey Callahan here, who's in charge of human resources, when the city has to spend millions of dollars in legal costs and violations of the law, and that person stays on the job, continues to get city money? That's, again, mismanagement and it's systemic corruption. And it's completely contained in this commission and has to be stopped. And the public in San Francisco are going to learn about this in this upcoming election, because the issue of corruption, retaliation, and bullying of public employees is going to become a political issue in this election. And you're all appointed. There are no labor representatives. There are no union representatives on this commission. It's basically appointed by management and union busters. And we intend to see that the public is aware of what you do and who you represent in the city and county of San Francisco. Thank you.
And this would be for Mr. Pataki or Ms. Knudsen, but I was concerned, I don't recall reading in the documents before an allegation that the MQs for the promotional positions were designed to favor certain individuals, and I'm wondering if that were the case, whether an appeal was filed on the minimum qualifications when the position was posted. I don't think...
Mr. Hill was training and being trained prior to that change being made. So if the MQ isn't in your hand or posted for you to understand that that's what you need, how could you possibly go get that experience? So what I'm saying is that the airport was grooming Mr. Hill for that position before anyone even knew about it. And that's what I stated earlier. So if you're crafting it, and you know, hey, I'm gonna add in this aviation aspect, and I'm gonna, at the same time that I know I'm gonna put it in there, I'm not gonna tell anyone yet, but I'm going to send Mr. Hill to train with this other person on meeting that qualification, but not let anyone else know who's gonna win. Because he can then meet the minimum qualification. And here's Sonya, who's the complaint happy one, right? Since 07. So we're gonna have more complaints, is that what we want? We want to get the complaints heard. And again, I can tell you just as simple as it is, Ms. Callahan, that is what happened at the airport. There are things that continue to happen, which is not coming up today, that'll be within the purview and brought before the airport commission. But it has to stop. The behavior must stop. And that's what happens there. I have other matters that require attention. So was it?
People can, if minimum qualifications for a position are posted with the intent to exclude certain individuals, favor others, they are subject to appeal. And I would certainly hope that people would appeal them if that's happening. For example, the example would be if you don't really need to speak German for a position, but I put that on the job description because I want the person who speaks German to get the job. That would be an example of an appropriate one. And we would expect that to be appealed. So I'm not sure that we're speaking about the same thing, but I appreciate your response.
I can speak to that effect in regard to the minimum qualifications. I chose not to file an appeal with both the interview process, and I chose not to file an appeal with regard to the minimum qualifications and the job postings and the entire processing, because I have been labeled complaint happy. And how many complaints do I really need to file to get someone's attention? But also, with regard to these respective positions, I previously worked at the Fine Arts Museums in San Francisco for 14 years. And the airport museums, while a very wonderful museum, it's one of the reasons I came down to the airport, is because we're a true museum in the most public of art settings, which to me was fantastic. It's one of the reasons I'm still there. I love what we do. The comparison to the Fine Arts Museums or the Asian Art Museum or any other institutions nationwide, it's unfair to compare an aviation museum to an art museum, but the standards with regard to certain positions, whether it be the director or a curator, for example, minimum qualifications are at a minimum, usually requiring a master's degree, and I'm the only one of the people that were selected. They do not have master's degrees, but I do.
Can we compare other institutions?
Well, the comparisons I'm bringing to your example were in fact a criteria I'm sure that was established by the Human Resources Office to create the job description and cater to the individuals in question. Thank you.
Your remark about why should I promote you when you've been away, could you clarify in your own mind, I mean, that has already been characterized as unfortunate, and I think you agree. In your own mind, there are two issues of a right to reinstatement versus a right to a promotion. Where were you when you made that remark to Ms. Knudsen?
Well, I don't have the ability to promote anybody. When we created a manager one for aviation, we did a J&Q with HR and created through the budget process a new position. The airport does not have unlimited funds, and the museum in particular doesn't have unlimited funds. So I have to be very careful in how the museum grows. And aviation was one of the places that we've had a lot of growth recently. We've had a lot of focus. And so that demanded a larger position. The role that John Hill was playing as a curator for, it required that we evaluate that role, and we did a JAQ for the aviation position, and then we had the merit process to do it. In terms of your specifically, Sonia was asking, you know, why not me? Why aren't you evaluating the Curator for Administration Special Projects? And it was a simple matter of where the work was being done at the time.
Thank you. I have a question, Charles. From the time, we've got it as a fact that this division, this department grew, as you mentioned, you scaled your model, which is great.
Well,
Let me, and we started with, the city started with 7, was it, did I just hear, how many employees did you start with?
probably 5.
5, it wasn't 5, that was my fault. 5, and now you're 30. In the time when the appellant went on medical leave in 07, to the time she came back in April of 08, approximately, I mean, how much did the department grow in that time? That's a year plus.
That's a good question.
Well,
You know, we were around 36 back in 99, 2000. It scaled back because of 9/11 and because of, and so by 2006, 2007, 2008, we were starting to pull more positions in. I think we were somewhere around 20, 21. So we made it 24, 25 by the time.
thank you.
Director Chief Curator of SFO Museum. To answer your immediate question, I was a hiring manager on the Manager 1 and Manager 2 hires, so I was involved in selecting the interviewers, as well as working with HR to write the questions, and then reviewing the interviews, reviewing the statements from the panelists, and then making a choice.
Did you have any conversations with the panel members about Mrs. Knudsen's complaints or her performance on the job?
We missed a question. And one of the most important questions is, during this time, how many people were promoted and how many were women?
Excuse me, I didn't ask that question.
I understand. I'm just saying I think we missed one. I'm not saying that you did, Commissioner, but I think this is a matter of discrimination, and we haven't asked that question. And I find that, I don't know the answer to that right now, but I sure would like to know.
Make a comment or get my impression of this. Yeah. Not one to hold back. I have an opinion on something. I personally think that the only decision that I'm having trouble with here is the promotional decision for Manager 1. And primarily that's because that was the one in which Ms. Knudsen was kind of called, she was rated second by everybody on the panel. There are some disturbing aspects that I see in this whole process. I think, the comments that Mr. Summers made, we've been over this, were not good. Respectfully, I think how much the department might have grown or changed in that year doesn't matter. If somebody takes a legally protected leave, they come back on the same footing as if they hadn't taken that leave. And I have some problems with those comments combined with the level of involvement that Mr. Summers had in that decision, selecting the panelists, participating in the what questions we're going to be asking. In hindsight, it certainly would have been prudent to create more of a wall between him and the decisions, but that didn't happen. And I also echo Mr. Pataki in saying that the 180-day limitation or deadline for making a complaint is unwise. I've sounded that opinion before. I think it's bad policy. I think it should be changed. And especially since in the second report, there's an implication that the promotional decisions were not fully investigated because of that, and that troubles me as well. Having said all that, I do take quite a bit of comfort in the fact that the DFEH did not find probable cause to believe that a violation had occurred. And this is an external agency. I have a lot of experience dealing with that agency, and when they think that an employer has either not been forthcoming or that there is a prima facie case of discrimination, they do not hesitate to issue a for cause finding, and they didn't in this case. And I do think that's significant. So my inclination would be to deny the appeal and accept the report on both of these items.
Is that a motion?
It is.
Okay, that's on part A, the first motion.
Right, so my motion on part A would be to accept the report tonight.
Okay.
That is on item number 12.
That's on
Correct.
item
And I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment?
Steve Zeltzer, United Public Workers for Action and Stop Workplace Bullying. Well, I was here at the last hearing, and there was discrimination in this case. And there was bullying of Ms. Knudsen. And using the rules, I think, unilaterally to go after her, which is what the Human Rights Commission has done, has furthered the harm to Ms. Knudsen. And this is not the only case in the city and county of San Francisco. You've had other cases, this commission, where people have been bullied, there have been violations, there's been retaliation, and there have been conflicts of interest. And what ends up is that these people are denied here and they go to court, and then the city is charged with paying millions, sometimes millions of dollars. So what is this committee, the Civil Service Commission, responsibility in this? When courts consistently rule for the public employees who've been discriminated and retaliated, and you say nothing's wrong. I say there is something wrong, and by your going along with the Human Resources Director, you're saying continue business as usual. And that is dangerous to the employee and dangerous to the city of San Francisco and the residents.
Which is item 13, sorry.
Well, under item 13, so I would move similarly to adopt this report
And I will second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public testimony? I mean, public comments?